You hear all the time about these private equity firms, right? They're making these huge moves, buying up companies left and right. But have you ever wondered, like, how they get such consistent results?
Yeah, it's really
I
interesting.
mean, they're, like, really good at what they do.
They are. And, it goes way beyond just the numbers. It's not just about financial wizardry. These firms are really invested in something that a lot of companies, I think, overlook.
Okay, and what's that?
People,
Talent.
talent, building high-performing teams, really managing that human capital. It's a core part of their strategy.
Okay, so before we get too deep into it, just a quick refresher for anyone who maybe needs it. Private equity firms, basically they buy companies, they restructure them, and the goal is to sell them later for a profit, right?
Exactly. Buy, improve, sell. That's the simplified version.
Right. But we're saying it takes more than just the financial stuff. You need the right people in place to execute that.
Oh, absolutely. And the best people, the best leaders, the right teams, all working together. And we've got some amazing research and case studies, that really break down how they do this so well, how their approach is different.
It's not your typical HR playbook, is it?
No, not at all.
From what I've seen, we're talking like swift leadership changes. They're not messing around, using data to make key decisions, and even like diversity plays a role I hadn't really considered before.
It's all connected. They view talent as this strategic advantage, not just a cost center. You know what I mean? Like, it's an investment that drives returns,
Yeah.
not an expense to minimize.
One of the things that really jumped out at me when I was going through all this material is just how laser focused they are on results, like right from the beginning.
Oh, yeah, completely. Their talent strategy is results driven from day one. Like a moment they acquire a company.
Boom.
They're conducting this really rigorous evaluation of the existing leadership team.
So it's not just like, oh, here's their resume, they look good.
Yeah.
It's more intense than that.
It's way more intense. It's like an audit. It's, do these leaders have what it takes to hit the goals, the really ambitious goals that we've set?
It's not just about experience or past successes. It's,
Yeah.
can they deliver here in this environment?
Exactly. And they're not afraid to make changes, big changes, even at the very top. If they don't see that alignment, like if the leader's skills don't match what they need to achieve, they're out.
Wow. No time wasted. Do you have a good example of that? A specific firm that does this well?
Bain Capital, they're known for it. Incredibly thorough leadership assessments. And it's not uncommon for them to, bring in their own people completely or make major changes to the existing team. Sometimes even before the acquisition is final.
So they're sending a clear message like, we're serious about this, we're here to win.
Exactly. They get that the right leadership is fundamental to everything else they want to do. It sets the tone.
Which brings us to our next point. Building that high-performance culture, right? It's one thing to have talented individuals. It's another to create the space where they can actually thrive. And something I noticed in the research is how private equity firms use incentives. It's pretty strategic.
Performance-based incentives are huge E.
It's not just salary. It's
tying compensation directly to achieving specific goals, making sure everyone is financially rewarded when the company succeeds.
so everyone has skin in the game,
Yeah.
Which is pretty different from a lot of traditional companies where that link between your individual effort and how the company does overall, it's not as clear.
Yeah, totally. And private equity firms want everyone thinking like an owner. They want to foster that. So a lot of times they'll give equity stakes to executives too, like a real piece of the pie, aligns their interests even more.
I was reading about a McKinsey study,
Yeah.
and they found that companies under private equity management, the ones that had those kinds of incentive structures, they were something like 20 to 30% more likely to exceed their financial targets.
It's a big difference. It shows you how much that motivation matters.
It really does. But it's not just about the money, is it? The research showed how much they invest in developing their people.
Right. It's another key thing that sets them apart. They don't just view talent management as an HR function. It's strategic. They're always evaluating, but also really investing in developing the skills that their companies will need in the future, thinking ahead.
So not just what skills people have today, but what they'll need tomorrow.
Precisely. And they do this through really targeted training programs, based on specific industry trends. They do executive coaching, helping leaders grow, and a lot of mentorship programs, cultivating that next generation. They're also big on succession planning, always evaluating who has the potential to step up.
So there's always someone ready to fill that role, even in a fast-paced environment. It's like they're building this deep bench.
A great example of this is The Carlyle Group, one of the biggest firms out there. They've made leadership development a core part of how they operate.
And how's that working out for them?
Really well. It's helped them both with performance A&D, retaining their top talent. People feel valued. They feel like they're growing.
It seems like that focus on the long term really makes a difference. But
Yeah.
it's not all gut feeling and intuition. We saw in the research how much data plays a role.
Oh, absolutely. Data, data, data. It's everywhere.
They're really data-driven in how they manage talent.
Incredibly so. They use data to inform like every stage of the talent management process, from performance reviews to recruiting. They're constantly analyzing it to make better decisions about promotions, team structures, who to hire.
Taking the guesswork out of it.
As much as possible, yeah. It's like they're using data to, really get a clear picture of their talent pool.
Yeah.
See the strengths, see the weaknesses, and then, make smarter decisions about where to invest their resources.
Right, right. It's not just about the now, though, is it?
Nope. They use data to anticipate future needs as well.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So by looking at, industry trends, how markets are shifting, even what competitors are doing,
Wow.
they can kind of predict where they're going to need to add new talent maybe, or, adjust skill sets. So they're staying ahead of the game.
It's almost like they're playing chess, always thinking several moves ahead.
Exactly. And they're not afraid to embrace tech to help them do it. A lot of firms are using AI now, even things like psychometric assessments in their hiring.
So it's not just about, like, the technical skills on a resume anymore.
No, it's about finding people with the right mindset, people who are adaptable, driven, can perform under pressure, and these tools help them get a better sense of that.
It's like they're trying to measure potential, not just what someone's already done.
Exactly, so they can build teams that are really aligned with their goals, and their vision.
It's a cool mix of, like, human insight and that hardcore data analysis.
It is, but it's not JST analysis and planning.
Right, because private equity, it moves fast.
Oh, yeah. Super fast-paced. High stakes. No time for just sitting around.
So how does that affect how they manage talent?
Well, they have to be decisive. They're known for making decisions quickly. And if a leader isn't performing, they're not going to wait 6 months to see if things get better.
They move on.
They move on. Find someone who can get the results.
It's like a culture of action. Less talk, more do.
Exactly. And you see this in how they handle, any kind of big changes to the company, too. Restructuring, consolidating departments, that kind of thing.
They make those moves quickly.
Quickly, because they know the business world changes constantly. Gotta adapt.
Speaking of changing landscapes,
Yeah.
let's talk about diversity. Because I know private equity has faced some criticism there.
Yeah, historically, there haven't been a ton of women, people of color in leadership positions. That's been true.
But it seems like there's a shift happening now.
I think there is. A lot of firms are really pushing to attract a more diverse workforce. And it's not just because it's the right thing to do, although, of course, that's important.
There's a business case for it, too.
Absolutely. There's more and more research showing that diverse teams make better decisions. And ultimately, that leads to stronger financial performance.
It's like everyone benefits.
Yeah, yeah. And we're seeing firms, requiring their companies to have diversity strategies, investing in training to combat bias in hiring. Some are even setting specific targets.
Like goals, like we need to hit this percentage by this date.
Exactly. Holding themselves accountable. Blackstone is a good example. They've been, I think, a real leader in this area.
They're actually putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, they're really integrating diversity into like all of their processes, investments, hiring, the whole thing.
It's good to see.
Yeah.
Because it does benefit everyone, not just the firm itself, but the companies they work with, even the economy as a whole.
I agree. It creates a ripple effect. Another thing we saw in the research, too, was how well these firms leverage their global networks. It gives them such an advantage when they need to find specific talent. They have this huge pool of potential candidates to draw from.
It's not just about who they know personally, it's this wider network.
Right. A lot of them work with specialized recruiting firms, too, who are really experts in certain fields. Plus, many firms keep their own databases of executives from their portfolio companies.
So they have this, like, ready-made talent pool.
Yeah, if they need someone to step into a leadership role, boom, they've got this network of people who've already proven themselves.
It's really impressive, the whole system they've built for talent. Identifying it, attracting it, developing it, and it's obviously a huge part of their success.
No question.
But it's not just about them, right?
Yeah.
There are lessons here for anyone,
Yeah.
even if you're not in high finance.
Oh, definitely. Most companies won't have the resources of a giant private equity firm, of course. But there are core principles that any organization or even an individual can use and benefit from.
So let's break that down. What are some of the big takeaways? Things that our listeners can actually apply to their own work, their own careers.
Well, I think one of the biggest is that strategic talent management isn't just for huge corporations, you know?
Yeah.
Like thinking about your team or even just your own career path with that same level of intentionality can be a game changer.
So instead of just filling roles, really think about the skills and capabilities you need to succeed now and in the future.
Exactly. And don't underestimate professional development. Private equity firms, they put a lot of emphasis on training, coaching. You can apply that same mindset to your own growth too.
Take some classes, go to conferences, find a mentor.
Exactly. And it's not just technical skills either. Think about leadership development, communication, strategic thinking. Those are valuable for anyone.
Good point. Another thing we talked about was how data-driven these firms are. Now, most people don't have access to fancy algorithms and all that, but you can still use data in your work to make smarter choices.
For sure. Track your progress, look
Yeah.
at the results, use that information to figure out where you can improve.
It's about being objective, not just going with your gut all the time.
Yeah. And this applies to evaluating yourself too, you know? Don't just wait for your yearly review.
Right.
Regularly assess your own strengths, weaknesses, and ask for feedback.
And speaking of feedback, I was really impressed by how direct and actionable the feedback is in private equity. They're not afraid to tell it like it is.
Yeah, they get right to the point.
Yeah.
Identify the problem and then how to fix it.
It's not sugar-coated.
Nope. It's about being honest, constructive, and that kind of feedback is crucial for growth. So don't be afraid to give it, receive it, and don't take it personally.
See it as an opportunity.
Exactly. Create a culture of feedback where you work,
Yeah.
where people feel safe sharing their thoughts.
Learning from each other.
Yeah. And don't forget about incentives. Private equity, they're amazing at tying rewards to performance. So think about how you can do that even in your own role.
Can you connect your goals to specific outcomes? Can you create a system where you're rewarded if you go above and beyond?
Those are good questions to ask yourself.
It's about motivation, finding ways to push yourself, push your team.
And it connects back to that ownership mentality we talked about. Even if you don't own the company, act like you do.
Be invested in the success of the whole team.
Exactly. Take initiative, look for ways to add value.
And finally, let's touch on diversity again. Private equity is starting to get it, that diverse teams get better results.
Yeah.
So whether you're the leader or you're, just starting out, think about how you can promote diversity and inclusion where you are.
Creating a space where everyone feels valued, respected.
And it's not just demographic.
No, it's diversity of thought, experience, background. Seek out different perspectives. Challenge your own assumptions.
This has been such a great deep dive. I mean, we've learned so much about how private equity manages talent and how that leads to their success.
It's been fascinating. It's really cool to see how these principles apply beyond just finance.
So, for everyone listening, we hope this has sparked some new ideas for you. Maybe a new way of thinking about talent in your own organization or your own career.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear your thoughts. What stood out to you? Are there any of these tactics that you think you could use in your own world?
Whether you're leading a team or, just trying to be more effective in what you do.
It's not about trying to, become a private equity firm,
Right.
but about taking inspiration and figuring out how to apply these principles in a way that makes sense for you.
It's about recognizing that talent, it's a strategic lever, no matter what you do. And then finding ways to put these ideas into action.
I love that. Be intentional. Be thoughtful about how you manage and develop people. Use data to make decisions. And always, always remember that people are your most valuable asset.
That's the key takeaway.
This has been an eye-opening deep dive. We've learned so much about how private equity firms approach talent management and how those strategies contribute to their success.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you. It's been fascinating to see how these principles can be applied far beyond the world of finance.
And for our listeners, we hope this deep dive has given you some new ideas and inspired you to think differently about talent, both within your organizations and in your own careers.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep. It really is. And, one thing that I think is so cool is how this all ties back to their financial performance.
It proves the point. right?
It does. People are a company's most valuable asset.
Totally. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We went deep on how these firms evaluate talent, how they build those high-performance
The
cultures,
data, the diversity.
the speed, the decisiveness. But I think the core message here is,
It's all about the people.
yeah,
Their success comes down to their ability to find the best people, develop them, and keep them around. It's not magic. It's not just about financial tricks. It's about investing in your team.
absolutely. So before we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with something to think about. What really stood out to you about how private equity approaches talent? What could you adapt, to your world?
Yeah, whether you're leading a team, building your career, or just trying to be more effective at work, think about that.
And it's not about becoming a private equity firm, right?
Not at all.
It's about taking inspiration, figuring out what works for you.
Thinking strategically about talent, no matter what industry you're in.
Love that. Be intentional. Be thoughtful about how you manage and develop people. Use data to make better decisions. And never forget, people are your most valuable asset.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
This has been a fantastic deep dive. I feel like we've learned so much about how private equity does talent management and how that translates into success.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you. I think there's some really powerful lessons here that go way beyond just the world of finance.
To our listeners, we hope you've gotten some new ideas, maybe a little inspiration, and that you'll think differently about talent going forward.
Keep learning, keep growing, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.